Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a review of a iconic Serge Lutens perfume. Serge is a brand that I've only done a couple reviews on the channel on, and many of them are not the ones that I have full bottles of. So this is a review actually as a special shout out to a friend. He goes by the handle A2 on his YouTube handle, if you will, and he sent me this bottle for free. So shout out to you, A2. Thank you very much for being so generous with your perfume, especially one as rare as the vintage Palais Royale version of Miel De Bois. So basically honey and woods, or woods and honey, or I don't know how you translate the French to English, if you will, but honey and woods is basically what that means. And so this is a Christopher Sheldrake creation from 2005, and this fragrance has almost no videos on it on YouTube, believe it or not. There's almost no full reviews, okay? So while this won't be a true YouTube exclusive, because there are a couple early impression videos, my good friend Rich Mitch did one. He did a first impression video on Miel De Bois. There's another first impression video, but all the other reviews are not in English, okay? So take that for what you will. So this isn't truly an exclusive review, but there aren't very many in-depth reviews of this fragrance on YouTube. And it's a shame, because this is one of the best honey fragrances out there, period. Now, before you fall out of your chair, if you know my taste, you know that I much prefer stuff from the 70s like this, okay? Givenchy's Gentleman, the vintage with the wraparound label, all-time Hall of Fame, top 10 fragrance for me. If you want a vintage style, fresher honey fragrance, you could go with something like Marbert Man. If you can find the vintage eau de cologne, these are very hard to come by. But even the newer version is okay. I love this fragrance. And of course, the all-time champion of honey fragrances for me, Hugo Boss, #1. The older bottles didn't even say #1 on them because there was no reason to. It was the only Hugo Boss masculine fragrance there was. This is from 1985. And then if you jump a couple years into the future, you have things like Lapidus, Homme. Of course, I much prefer the honey style done in the 70s and 80s because I'm a vintage guy, right? And that's just where my heart is. Speaking of heart, you can see Texas on my shirt today. The Rangers are playing the Astros to see who goes to the World Series. So by the time you guys are watching this in the future, we will probably know whether this is all outdated information or not. But I'm not the biggest baseball fan. I much prefer hockey. But when it comes to, you know, my local team getting to go to the World Series, I'm watching. So my favorite style of fragrance of honey is the vintage style. But with the vintage style comes dirty animalic notes. Pissy honey is how I describe the vintage style honey used in masculine perfumery. This is a honey fragrance done completely different. It's almost like Christopher Sheldrake wanted to wipe the slate and create a new floral, like reimagine using honey in perfume. It's like a reimagined honey perfume. There's nothing that smells like this. When this came out in 2005, there has since been a fragrance that I think inspired heavily by Miel De Bois, and that is Zoologist's Bee. So Bee is heavily inspired by Miel De Bois. I think Miel De Bois is much, much better as far as the fragrance goes. I think Bee is okay, but Bee is sort of trying to do what Miel De Bois does, but they're trying to, you know, use notes like royal honey and stuff like that. It smells a little bit more jellied, whereas Miel De Bois has this unbelievable freshness about it, okay? But also, in a way, there is something slightly animalic to it. I heard one of the reviewers use the word caustic in the beginning. So there's almost something slightly animalic, but balanced beautifully with the fresher, more floral side of honey. So how does this fragrance open up? On first spray, and I'm wearing it as my scent of the day. I've worn it to bed multiple times since I've had it, and you can see I put a little bit of a dent in the bottle since I got it from A2. And A2 very kindly also, I should mention, sent me a vintage bottle of Mona Diorio's Queer, which I am absolutely loving, the vintage Mona Diorio Queer. The new version is pretty good as well. But I'm going to do a comparison video between the two one of these days. But that fragrance, according to Parfumo, shows Discontinued. If that's true, that is a travesty. So if you love that fragrance as much as I do, try to secure your bottles now. Okay, back to Miel De Bois. So how does it open up? So upon first spray, the way that it smells to me is it smells like purple honey. Okay, purple because there's a lot of iris in here, high class iris. Okay, slightly rooty, slightly powdery, but very high class, and it gives it this purple glow. So imagine like a purple glowing honey that is both slightly golden and slightly animalic at the same time. All right, and imagine, you know, those commercials where they're showing honey being poured, and it's kind of being poured into the same spot, and the honey just kind of like builds up onto itself because there's always so much room in the spoon, right? Kind of tilt the honey over and squeeze it, and that golden honey just sort of pours down. Just imagine the texture. Imagine it sort of building up onto itself as more gets poured onto the same spot. And that's how the fragrance smells in the beginning. And one thing that I noticed almost instantly is the note of hawthorn. Now, hawthorn is a big part of this scent to me. And if you've ever smelled some of the way that hawthorn is used in some of the classic fragrances by, you know, folks like Jean-Claude Elena uses hawthorn to perfection. So for example, if you've ever smelled Cuir d'Ange, which basically means angel leather, he used hawthorn to sort of impart this white, beige, soft, supple, almost like calf leather feel to the leather, right? It adds this whiteness to a fragrance. And what's interesting is hawthorn adds that exact same white feeling to the honey note in Miel De Bois. And that white feeling we'll come back to with another reference later on. Excuse me. So imagine this white feeling honey, which is brilliantly played off against this flowery, slightly powdery, slightly almondy facet of the perfume, okay? So imagine like a slightly almondy, powdery, floral facet, and the hawthorn adds this clean, fresh sparkle to the fragrance, right? So, you know, you take that honey note and it just is almost like putting a spotlight on it, literally putting a spotlight on it and watching it just sparkle in the light. And so I always think the great ones kind of know how to play with contrast in perfume. I've talked about it before, and, you know, contrast in perfume is a major, major factor to creating a proper perfume. And playing something dirty off against something clean is something that I think has become a little bit of a lost art. Some of the great fragrances of the past did have something dirty about them. So just imagine something slightly dirty and yellow from the honey and something clean and white from that hawthorn accord, that spotlight accord that I mentioned earlier. And if you're familiar with actual hawthorn blooms, interestingly enough, you know that they carry a compound called, I'm going to butcher this, so bear with me, triethylamine. Okay, so triethylamine, which some say smells like ammonia, and others say it actually smells of decaying flesh because it's one of those first chemicals a decomposing corpse gives off. How's that for a fact of the day for you? So my guess is that this hawthorn note in here is synthetically produced. They're not using real hawthorn. They probably don't want the decomposing corpse smell, but maybe they do. Who knows? But just imagine synthetically created, giving the idea of death. And honey kind of brings my mind to the beehive itself, right? And so bees are, to me, they're a very fascinating creature because everything from their, you know, hive mind that they kind of live with to, you know, whenever they die, bees release an oleic acid, which is actually kind of like alerts other members of the hive that, hey, we have a soldier down, man down, right? And it sort of alerts other members to come and either come to the aid of that bee who's been killed or, you know, decide if they need to retreat to the hive or whatever it may be. And remember, unlike wasps that can sting somebody or something or an animal or whatever it is many, many times over, when a bee stings someone, its abdomen literally gets ripped out and it dies. So it's like a one-time shot, right? And so for a bee to sting is to basically die. And so they literally have to sacrifice themselves for the good of the hive, if you will. And what's interesting for a colony that can, whenever you get close to a bee hive, apparently bees stink. So if you've heard Rich Mitch talk about this, if you get close to bees hive, they're dirty in some aspect, and I think it has to do with maybe their immune system. I can't remember exactly. He kind of held court on the topic once on a live stream. But on the other side, they're actually unbelievably clean, right? So if you go on YouTube, there's some observation hive videos that you can watch. And if there's ever like an accident in the hive or something, I don't know, can you like spill? Do bees like spill their milk on the hive floor or something? I don't know. But imagine like an accident happens. These worker bees come instantly. And you can see how quickly they clean up the spills with their disinfectant. Their saliva is actually disinfectant. They also gather antimicrobial resins from plants that they go around to when they're collecting pollen and stuff like that. So like leaf buds and wounded plants will give off, they'll collect this material and turn it into what's called propolis. And propolis is pretty much like the smell of a beehive. It's basically what a beehive smells like. And it's actually a big part of Miel De Bois. So whenever you wear Miel De Bois, propolis gives off this coniferous accent because it's green plants, that they're plant material that the bees are collecting. And it also gives off slightly balmy, slightly resinous-like feel. And it's mixed with notes of like vanilla, and hyacinth, okay? And so the bees kind of coat their hive in this entrance. So the entrance of the hive, which is the most vulnerable part of the hive, because the bees are constantly coming and going. So like imagine if one of the bees picks up something while they're out and about, a fungus, a parasite, whatever it may be, a sickness, an illness. Bees can get STDs too. That's something I learned in my research of researching Miel De Bois. Absolutely insane. Can you believe bees can get STDs? But it's absolutely crazy, the nature and how it works. But the bees coat the hive's entrance with this antimicrobial propolis, if you will. They put it all over the honeycombs. They put it on the larva. And so there's a touch of this fungal-like smell to this fragrance as well, along with the sweetness of the honey. But the genius of Christopher Sheldrake is the contrast, right? So earlier I mentioned bees can stink. They're slightly dirty, but they're also unbelievably clean, right? And there's this sort of contrast between dirty and clean, not just going on in the smell, but going on in real life in the beehive as well. And there's something just really beautiful about that to me. The fragrance is slightly warm, slightly spicy, and like I said, one of the geniuses of Christopher Sheldrake in creating Miel De Bois is that it's not too sweet. So there is a sweetness to this. You could make the case that this is like a gourmand honey fragrance to some effect, but he balanced it brilliantly. I don't think you could have balanced it any better. Like, this is master work. He was at the top of his game on stuff like this. Mid-2000s, early 2000s, Christopher Sheldrake creating Serge Lutens. I mean, you know how there's some guys in their career that maybe they're not like the best for the longest, but during that 5-year span, let's say that pitcher was just unhittable, or that hitter would just hit the ball out of the park consistently. They were just that hot on a tear. Christopher Sheldrake was on an absolute tear in the early 2000s when it comes to Serge Lutens. And Miel De Bois, to me, is one of those Hall of Fame, just absolutely fantastic creations. So there's this fungal-like smell. It's warm, it's spicy, and more importantly, what I want you to keep in the back of your mind is the texture of the fragrance, okay? So whenever you're smelling this, I want you to sort of imagine that texture of pouring honey and how it pools when it's kind of poured into one place, right? You know how when you're pouring honey consistently into like a small area, you get kind of the honey settles eventually, right? But before it settles, you can almost see because of the texture of the honey and the way that it's poured. So keep that in mind all the while we're talking about it. And what's even more impressive is the fragrance begins to brighten up. Okay, so what's interesting about it, I don't know if it's the florals that are used or what, but somehow the fragrance, as it continues to dry, gets slightly brighter in feel to me. And yesterday I reviewed a fragrance for Amouage called Ashore from 2020. Mackenzie Riley made that fragrance. And in the perfume, they listed a note that they called a solar note, okay? And so I can't help but feel that this has almost like a sunlight feeling to it. Remember I said that it was like a spotlight on the honey type feel. So for me, when I smell this fragrance, it really does feel like there's a sun-like feeling. Like imagine going outside and the sun is at high noon, right? When you walk outside, but you've been inside all day, and so your eyes are kind of like adjusted to inside light. So you seem slightly blinded when you walk out, and the sunlight seems extremely bright. Everything in the world just seems extra bright. There's not a cloud in the sky, right? And you go outside and you notice that there's a whole group of bees out there just collecting pollen from the different flowers, even kind of the shitty weed-like flowers on the ground no one pays attention to. They'll pollinate all that stuff, right? And so you notice that they're just out there working, busy worker bees, right? And they're just working away, collecting pollen, collecting propolis. And whenever one of them gets really close to you, and we have all kind of bees around here. We do have honeybees. We also have those big fat carpenter bees, they call them. I think they live in like the walls and stuff, wood walls. And whenever a bee gets close to you, you notice just how, you know, their wings of the body almost look transparent, right? And if you look at the box, if you go to Parfumo and actually type in Miel De Bois and look at the picture, the second picture on Parfumo that you can click on, it's actually the advertisement of the original Palais Royal Miel De Bois bottle. I think they only put this in the bell jar now, unfortunately. But, excuse me, sorry, didn't mean to do that in your ear. And so when you look at the original advertising campaign for Miel De Bois, it almost looks like the bottles here, and it almost looks like two wings, transparent. You can see the detailing of the wings of the bee. You can't see anything else, just sort of the wings itself. They overlap just underneath the bottle, and the bottle's sort of sitting right where the wings overlap, right? So imagine that sort of transparent feeling of the wings. Imagine sort of the bee literally like digging itself into the flower to get to the pollen, you know, and when you see a honeybee up close, you notice how small and delicate they look. Not the big fat carpenter bees, those don't look delicate at all. But the honeybees look small and delicate and just perfectly attuned to their task. You know, they're designed for their job at hand, and they perform it with almost like military precision, right? The hive mind idea. And it's beautiful to watch. If you actually sit and watch bees, I've got a butterfly bush out in my garden, and butterflies love it, but bees also will come and pollinate and you know, take turns going into the flowers and all that stuff. And if you just stand there and you don't mess with them, they won't mess with you. They'll just go kind of do their thing. But sometimes they'll get so close, you can actually see the pollen on their legs as they're sort of flying away, or the propolis on their legs as they're flying away. They're just well-oiled machines. The other thing I read that really kind of made me smile is somebody said that this fragrance has serious pull value to it. And I agree with them. They said if you're a guy wearing this, you will attract your queen bee. And if you're a queen already, if you're a girl, then you might attract a whole swarm of worker bees, probably a bunch of guys trying to hit on you, because this has a perfectly unisex quality to it. There's nothing overtly masculine about it. There's nothing overtly feminine about it. He truly created the perfect middle-of-the-road honey fragrances. My favorite honeys from the past, these lean heavily masculine. Heavy masculinity in things like Givenchy Gentleman, Marbert Man, Boss Number 1, the ones I showed earlier. These are heavy masculine. These are my favorite type of honey fragrances because I have a personal bias, but when I take that bias away and I just evaluate this on its own merits, this is an absolutely perfect middle-of-the-road unisex honey fragrance. And it's so different and yet so posh and so elegant. I would have no problem wearing this to work. I'd have no problem wearing this to a date. I'd have no problem wearing this to a wedding. I mean, you could wear this anywhere, literally anywhere, and it would work. That being said, I do feel like this is one of those fragrances that kind of takes a little bit of a confident person to wear. I feel like you have to have maybe a little bit of a leader personality. And you have to have some presence about you. You have to have some gravitas about you. I think it would be best suited for somebody that has those type of qualities. You know, somebody who's not afraid to grab the microphone and start talking. Someone who's not afraid to say, "Follow me." Someone who's, you know, someone that would, someone whose fragrance, whose personality would be amplified by a fragrance such as Miel De Bois, right? Because I really feel like this, and it's surprisingly long lasting. It's surprisingly, what's the word that I'm looking for? It is surprisingly tenacious, okay? So not like modern amber wood tenacious where it puts you off, but I'm shocked by how long this lasts. And on skin too. It's really, really something. And as a side note, one thing I should mention, I mentioned there's a few first impression videos on this, but there's almost no one talks about this fragrance, and I have no idea why. Rich Mitch has a good video on it. You should go check that one out. In that video, Rich actually said something that really stuck with me. And what he said is, sometimes Rich is, he is prone to coming up with these brilliant sayings. And what he ended up saying is, he said that this smells like honey, which has been created from bees who actually went around their hive and harvested pollen from a field of iris flowers. And I thought, God damn, that was like a stroke of genius right there that Rich just said, because it is literally spot on. I mean, that is one of the best descriptors that I've ever heard for this fragrance. Absolute best descriptor. And, you know, in the fragrance note listing, there's both honey and on top of the honey, there's beeswax. Okay? Beeswax can come across as slightly animalic as well. But that whole idea of bees harvesting the pollen of iris flowers is a brilliant comment. Spot on, Rich. Absolutely spot on. Now, one thing that you'll notice me not talking or putting very much emphasis on is the woods, okay? So there are some woods in this fragrance, and there's actually 3 different types of wood. So I think Miel De Bois officially means wood honey, if that is a good translation. And the woods in here, I mean, it's literally in the name, right? So the woods in here are Gaiac wood, which Gaiac wood can sometimes have like this barbecue wood feel, if you will. Gaiac wood can sometimes come across as slightly smoky, and you know, it can have almost like a barbecue, almost like hints of tobacco in the wood as well. Almost like burning, you know, like being in a bonfire in winter kind of thing. There's absolutely nothing light and airy about Gaiac wood, okay? It's usually in heavier perfumes. And when I saw Gaiac wood in here and I smelled this, I was almost thinking like, maybe I'm missing something, because there is not a wood in this at all that smells heavy. The heaviest thing is the honey in this fragrance. The honey is spot on the heaviest note in this perfume to me. It's the star of the show. The beeswax and the honey combined. And, you know, when you think about the absence of those woody notes, there's other woody notes as well. There's oak wood, and there's ebony wood, okay? And none of those woods, I think you can really, you know, ebony wood is kind of one of those dense, hard woods. And none of the associations with those woods smell like they're in here. And so what it's almost like is, it's almost like a beekeeper who has a hobby. Let's say you find a beekeeper who is as passionate about bees as we are about perfume, right? And that beekeeper is creating, you know, let's say a home for his bees, and he's out there hand making this wooden box, right? And he creates this wooden box for the bees to build their hives in, right? And you can actually transfer bees. Apparently you capture a queen, you put the queen in there, and the hive, you know, they will, I guess, follow her. I'm not 100% sure how it goes. They can have wars too. Bees have wars. They're cool little creatures. But, you know, just imagine the beekeeper creating this wooden box that the bees build their hives in. And when you look at it, and let's say the hive is complete, they've built out their honeycombs. When you look at it, let's say you're admiring this beautiful hive or whatever, Is it the box that you're looking at, or is it the hive inside? Is it the bees inside that the person's passionate about? Yes, you can, you can see the box. The box is there. The wood part, the structure is there. The skeleton's there. The scaffolding is there. But the box itself is not the star of the show, right? It's the stuff inside. It's the it's the honey and the bees themselves. And so it's almost like when it comes to the woods in this fragrance, it's like you can feel their presence. It's like you can sense their presence. You know when someone's standing behind you and you don't hear them walk up or whatever, but you get this like feeling like they're there, you know what I mean? It's almost like you're sensing the presence of somebody or something when it comes to the woods being used in here. And so you can sense the woody notes, but they're not front and center. It really is built in a way where the woods are just the scaffolding, they're the skeleton of the scent, and it allows the honey to shine. And for me, it's a brilliant honey fragrance, one of the best honey fragrances ever. I'm shocked there's not more reviews of this. I did read some reviews, and everyone says that. Everyone, of course, is going to say, oh, the new stuff is nowhere near as good as the old stuff. But I have seen some reviews where they say, oh, I got a sample of the vintage Palais Royale, and then I went back and bought a bottle, and it's nothing like I remember, blah, 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 right? So I don't know about reformulation. I have found overall Serge does pretty good reformulations. I must say, I am very partial to these older Serge Lutens bottles. They just fit perfectly in the hand. I mean, everything is perfect about these little 50 ml bottles. I love the way they look on the shelf. They're so clean. The marketing, the advertising, the bottle, the cap, I don't know why they changed. I have no clue. They went to these right here, which this is a bottle of Bornéo 1834, which I really like, but there is a little bit of a plasticky smell in here that I've heard some people say is not in the vintage bottles. But then again, I've heard some people say that the bottles of stuff like Queer Moresque in here, which I have yet to smell amazing and smell very, very similar to the vintage bottles. So I don't know. It's just something I thought I would mention. But as far as bottle style goes, while I do think these are kind of cool, I much prefer these. I think these are... Serge Lutens needs to just admit they made a mistake and go back to these, in my opinion. They just need to go back. They just need to, say, guys, we made a mistake. We're going back to this. And I think it would be well received by the market, if you ask me, because these are really something special. But now that they're gone, people treat these like, $500 for 50 ml. It's just absolutely crazy, some of the prices these vintage bottles go for. But I do have to, again, thank A2 for sending me this. I know I've been rambling for a couple minutes here, but thank you, A2. This review would not have been possible without you and your generosity and your kindness. If you have experience with Miel De Bois, I would love to hear your thoughts. Do leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about Serge Lutens as a house. It's a brand you're going to be seeing more reviews from. I want to review my all-time favorites. Chergui came up yesterday in my 2001. This is not this year in perfume video that I did. It came in at the #1 spot. So Serge has some big hitters coming up, and I want to review them for you. I want to do individual reviews. I feel like doing individual reviews is a little bit of a lost art. Everyone just wants to go up there and show their, top 10 compliment list and show the bottle, and they all want to be Vanna White, and they all want to kind of, do their thing and put it in lists and give you an affiliate link. And speaking of affiliate links, I was given the opportunity to have an affiliate linked by a well-known niche brand. I won't say who, but I turned them down because I said, how do you have an affiliate link and then be honest about a review? Like, could you imagine bashing a fragrance and then putting an affiliate link in there? It's never going to work, right? So I said, no, I'm not into the affiliate link things, but if you send me some samples, I'd be interested in exploring. I've never smelled anything from this house. So I was like, send me some samples and I'd be interested in smelling. Well, I don't think they ever got back to me. I doubt they they will. The girl was just completely confused. She's like, what? You don't want the affiliate link? So you do or don't want the affiliate link? So she was completely confused. Like, it made zero sense to her what I was trying to say. So I was like, just forget about it. But so that's why you never see affiliate links or anything like that on my channel, because I just think it's crap. I mean, at that point, you're an infomercial. You're not a reviewer, and I want to stay on the reviewer side. So even though this bottle was given to me for free, it was not given to me for free by a brand. It was given to me for free by one of you, which means I can say whatever the hell I want about it. Luckily, I absolutely love it. So thank you, A2, and thanks to everyone who sent me something, even if they're just little samples. I promise I'll get to them at some point. It's just a matter of time. So thanks for watching. Let me know what your favorite honey fragrances are. I did do a This Is Not a Top 10 honey video. If you want to go check out where are my all-time classics like this fall, do let me know. You can go check that out under the playlist. This is not a top 10. You can find the honey one. But appreciate everyone watching. Cheers, guys, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.